This is episode 123 of the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Cade, and today I'm speaking with Jennifer S. Kelly. Jennifer is an author and freelance turf writer. Her first two books, Sir Barton and the Making of the Triple Crown, and The Foxes of Belair, Gallant Fox, Omaha, and The Quest for the Triple Crown, chronicle the lives and careers of the first three American Triple Crown winners. She also contributes to the Racing Biz, America's Best Racing, and TwinSpires Edge. Jennifer's work focuses on both the history of horse racing as well as current events, drawing on her deep knowledge and experience to share stories of the names and faces of this great sport. Settle up for a candid conversation about parenting while writing, the creative power of an hour alone, and why reaching out to fellow authors is a path to success. Now, let's get into the interview. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Carly Cade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Cade, and today I am so excited to have Jennifer S. Kelly back on the show to talk about her newest book. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome.
Hi, Carly. Thanks. I'm so excited to be reunited with you.
I'm so glad to have you back. We actually had a really fun chat before we began recording the show, and Jennifer has some really exciting horsey news to share for her update since the last time we talked. I know it. I'm excited, but you're going to debut it here. Go for it.
I have a couple of fun things that I've done since my first book came out in 2019. And I was on the podcast last time. So I wrote my first book, Sir Barton and the Making of the Triple Crown, 5 years ago, and finished it in 2018. It came out in 2019. And ever since it came out, I told my husband I really want a tattoo of him because he's so meaningful to me, not just because I wrote a book about it, but because I feel like he got me restarted in this career and, helped me realize his ambitions. And so I was like, I really want a tattoo, but I had a long drawn out process trying to find the right artist and trying to find, a tattoo parlor and all that stuff. And so finally, I happened to find a young woman named Audrey who did the sketch, and she did a fantastic job. And she's done another thing for me, which I'll show in a minute. And then I found a tattoo parlor in town that actually I was able to get into because after COVID, it got really, really challenging. A lot of the tattoo places in town were very booked, and I worked my way into it. So January, I finally bit the bullet and just got the tattoo, and here it is. And he is so pretty. So this is Sir Barton, and you can tell it's him by the blaze. Like I told the guy when I did, and Audrey when I did the sketch, it has to be correct. It has to look like him, and it very much does. And I have been just giddy ever since. And I can't wait to show it off when I go and do in-person events this year, because it has been literally 5 years in the making. And so I am so thrilled to be able to show that off because I finally have that connection to him that I've been dying for since, I first started the book and got to know him really well.
It's beautiful. And for people who aren't watching us on YouTube, you had it done on it's going to look gorgeous when you wear a dress, by the way, and when you're doing signings. But describe where it is and why you put it over there.
It's on my left side. So it's on my left bicep. I am left-handed. And so I have more than one tattoo, and I wanted them as many as I could on my left side because I am left-handed. But I especially wanted him on my left side because, your heart is right here, and I wanted him close to my heart. So that's why he's right there. And, my husband is such a wonderful person. He was like, you go for it, you do it. And so anytime I got really nervous about putting something so broad, out there, because I'm, usually not that big of a person. I don't usually have a bunch of tattoos where people can see them. He's like, just go for it. Just do it. It's fine. It's great. Okay. good, thanks, husband. And then, and so he was even there for part of the process and like watched the guy work and everything. And it was lovely. So, and then Audrey did for me. My other horsey thing is like a couple of years ago, I had this idea that since I've written this book and then my new one, which is right here, this one, and it's about two horses this time, not just one. I wanted the three horses in a picture with me. So I sent my friend Audrey, who did the sketch, an idea like, here, can you do a commission where you have three of them looking over my shoulder while I'm working? And she's like, sure, I could do that. And this is what resulted. And I hope you guys can see it. And I'm sure Carly will put up a better version of it, but she did an amazing job. She even incorporated me into it. Like, if you look, like, there I am right there with the glasses on and everything. It cracks me up. So I'm very excited to tout Audrey because she's extremely talented.
I know the minute you showed me that picture, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want one
I
of
know.
those. It's such a cool picture because it's literally where you sit in
Mhm,
your office with
mhm.
you behind your computer, and you are so cute popping up, and all three horses that are so close to your heart that you've written about are over your shoulder watching you as you put the words
Yes,
on the page. It's
I
the
know. It's just,
coolest picture. I love
and
it.
I love the detail where she had, I think it was Omaha, like leaning in further so he could see better what was going on. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm
It's
dead.
adorable. It's
It's just way too
adorable.
cute.
And
So,
and I'm so excited that you shared that with me. Thank you. This is the first time you've debuted your new tattoo and shared about the artist that helped you
yes,
achieve a
yes.
dream. That is
I love
so cool.
I just it's been I love my tattoos. I've got, like I said, I got like 6, but I've always been really nervous about showing them off because I was a teacher for a long time, and so I really didn't want to be a distraction.
Mm.
But then now at this age, I'm like, whatever.
And you've got a husband that's like, "Go for it,"
Yeah, and
and it makes you happy. I
it
clearly hear,
does.
like, you did something you wanted to do, and you were bold about it, and now you have that to show off at your book signings on your left-hand
Oh,
side.
I can't wait. Well, and it's par for the course because I don't think I would be here if I didn't have that gumption to just go for it
Mhm.
and just do it. And, it takes a lot of bravery to put yourself out there like that. And but I feel like if I don't do it, what opportunities am I missing out on? So I love the idea that I've got this and people can comment on it and we can bond over, the idea that there's something that meaningful that you're willing to put it out there like that. So,
Yeah, and what a great conversation starter, honestly, for your books. Like,
yes.
I mean, it's like beautiful. I mean, but it's not intended for that. But it would be a great
Oh,
doorway with
yeah.
This horse meant so much to me, and I
Yes.
wrote my first book
That I
because
wrote a
of
book
this
about
horse.
him.
I know, it's incredible. So,
Yes.
what an honor to the horse also that
Yeah.
started your book writing career. But
Absolutely.
but what I'm really excited about is you have a new book. Tell
Mhm.
us about your newest book and what inspired you to take this one on and write this one.
Okay, so this one, I'll show it again. This is The Foxes of Belair. It's Gallant Fox, Omaha, and the Quest for the Triple Crown. That's like the subtitle. This is actually about the second and third Triple Crown winner. So Gallant Fox and Omaha. They were owned and bred by the same man, William Woodward, and trained by the same person, Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons. And after I wrote the first book on Sir Barton, I felt like it was a natural progression to move to the next two because when I did the book proposal for the first book, part of doing a book proposal for a nonfiction book is they want you to talk about other titles or similar to the ones that you're doing. And so I had gone through and done, quite a bit of combing through secondhand stores and whatnot, trying to find other books and other Triple Crown winners. And of course, as I'm doing all this, I'm taking notes about who hasn't had books written about them. So it's like, here's the books that are existing, here's the books that aren't. And now I have ideas.
Mm,
So
very
when I
smart.
finished that one, I was actually doing the book tour for the first book and I had a break. And so when I had that break, I was able to sit down and actually write 3 chapters for the book proposal so that I knew not just for me, but also for my publisher's edification, that it was doable as a book. Like there was going to be enough content to actually make a book, and what it was going to take to do the research for this one, because it's a slightly different time period. So I I love it because they were owned by the same man, bred by the same man, same decade, and it was just a lot of fun to do another book like this, but with slightly more access because
Mm.
there's more material because it's a later time, and it was a lot of fun, except for it was during COVID, so it was a slightly different experience than the first one.
Yeah, and it wasn't a bit of an uphill battle for you because it was a different experience with through lockdown. So
Mhm.
how did you, you shared a little with me before the show, but like how
Mhm.
did you manage your writing career while while all the things were going on in your home that were not like the first book?
Well, by the time so I started writing the book proposal in 2019, and I actually started the writing full time in January of 2020. I spent a week right before lockdown in Kentucky at the Keelan Library doing a residency where I was able to spend the whole week getting hard copy research, going through books, kind of getting a lay of the land in terms of what was available to me, and came home with like a bunch of, materials. And immediately the next week, my kids were out of school, everything was locked down. The library was not open for 6 months, so there was no accessing any of those resources, unless they happened to be in the office, and then I would send in a request, and, depending on what it was, sometimes I would get it immediately, and sometimes I would take a few days to get what I needed because all I needed was, like, a scan or something. But I was also, like, virtually educating the kids, and at this point, my youngest is in 2nd going on 3rd grade, and my oldest was in 5th grade going into 6th grade. My husband started working from home, so we were tag teaming. So we had, the oldest child who has some learning difficulties, and then the youngest child who's, fine and didn't need as much help. And so both of us are trying to get 40 hours a weekend while making sure our oldest child had everything he needed to get through his classes, because he's got these learning challenges that make it, he needs a bit more help than the youngest child. Make sure the youngest child is getting through everything and that both of them are staying mentally, fine. All of us mentally fine,
Mm.
fed, and happy. I will still remember this book for all the days that I spent trying to shoo my children out of the office. Like, I need 2 hours where I'm uninterrupted so I can finish this thought, because the moment they were done with class, I'd come in, like, "Can I have some juice?" Like, "Did you walk by your father to ask you this question? Couldn't you just ask him?" You know, like
That's
that kind of
funny.
stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I have a wonderfully supportive husband and a couple of children who now are like, "This is old hat, whatever, mom writes books, it's fine." Like, they don't think anything of it anymore.
I have a door hanger that I actually put on my office door that says "Writer at work, do not
Mhm,
disturb," to try and get my husband to think before he knocks on the door. But what I love that you shared that because it's still possible, even when so much crazy is going on and
mhm,
routines change and life happens, it's still possible to stay committed to your
mhm.
creativity and a project that you're excited about, even while all this is going on. So good on you for
Thank you.
finishing it, meeting your deadlines, and tackling it still while life happens. So it's just a great story that you can still stay committed and get things done. It just takes a little more, right?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I want people to take away from this that, you know, you have a goal,
Mhm,
and you are, by all means, should stick to your goal.
mhm,
You're important. Your goals are important. And having children, I think a lot of writers feel like their children should be their priority. And absolutely, they should be. Your children, though, they need to see you work. They
mhm,
need to see that you're working. They need to see that you have something that's yours, so that later, when they're older and they have a partner who has, ambitions, who has goals, that they understand what that looks like and what it takes to support those kinds of things. And so they saw my husband supporting me, and then vice versa. And I'm in there making dinner and doing what I need to do to make sure he's got what he needs, and he's doing the same thing. So if I'm traveling, my husband's like, your mom's traveling, I got this. Like, it's
Mm,
not a big deal. So, I mean, my husband and I have set up our structures within our home where the children are integrated into this. They see what mom and dad are doing. They understand they play a role in it, and that they need to, not just let mom and dad be the one meeting their needs. They also need to figure out ways that they can help mom and dad meet their goals too. And so, I'm hoping my children take away from this the value of like persistence.
mhm. And partnership. I'm so
Yes.
glad you shared that. I mean, that is amazing. Yes, I have children and they are my priority, but I also have things that I want to accomplish in my life, and
Hmm.
setting up for that, and then also showing your family that there's partnership involved, there's
Hmm.
persistence involved. There's a lot of things that are important. And I love that. I love that you shared that. That was really
Yeah.
powerful.
Well, that was how we got through it, how we
Mhm,
got through lockdown. Because I mean, during COVID, there were a lot of days where you felt very much like, all your world is shrunken down to this little bit.
mhm.
And, like, I didn't want my mental health or my boys' mental health to be compromised by that. So, it's like you have to learn to balance. We as adults already learned how to balance things. And because I was talking to my husband about that last night. We were talking about division of labor in the house because I'm trying to get the boys to be more integrated into running the household because they're getting older. They're 11 and 15, and they need to understand what it takes to run a house. And it's like, they need to see us partnering. They need to see us dividing up the labor, and they need to see it not in a way that we saw it as children.
Mm,
It needs to be a different evolution. And, that was kind of how we got through lockdown, was creating new routines, creating, new things that we can do with our children, getting them to understand the value of alone time, not just for them, but for us too. Like, we're all like in this space together for hours and hours and hours, days on end. And it's like you need to have your time to do your thing, and not be constantly inundated by another person's presence. And your dad and I need the same thing,
mhm,
And now that they're out and about and they're doing more normal stuff, it's like I need to know they have empathy,
mhm,
so that when they leave the house, they have empathy not just for themselves, but for the people around them. And like they need to see mom and dad sharing. They need to see mom and dad sharing the load, and taking on different roles at different times, because that's what their lives are going to look like
mhm,
when they're older. And they need to see mom working and mom being productive,
mhm,
because before mom was in a classroom and they didn't see that.
mhm,
They just knew that mom left and went to work and came back. It's like now it's like, I made something,
mhm.
I put it out in the world, and like I'm trying to contribute to, something greater than myself. And I want them to have those same sorts of ambitions for themselves. Like, not just get up and go to work, but like what does your work mean to you long term, and not just the work you're doing, but how you're doing it.
Oh,
I hope that makes
that is
sense.
so responsible. That's such responsible parenting, and I love it. I love everything about that. I'm so glad you shared that.
Well, I think it's important because you feature a lot of writers who are women,
Mhm,
and I know a lot of women writers, and I want people who might be sitting here watching this going, I really would love to do this myself, but I feel stuck,
mm,
or I feel like I'm not sure how I'm going to start. And it's like, just start. Just figure it out. Just like, think about your routine and what you can do, maybe to, integrate other people into the routine, and delegate, and say, I need an hour to close my door, and tell my family that I'm going to take this hour to do this thing, and hopefully everyone will meet you there
mm.
and say, yes, I can't wait to see what comes of your hour. you
Oh,
know I'm going to do what I can to help you. And at first, when I first started doing this, and my kids were like, I don't understand why, why you're bugged by me coming in asking for juice. And I was like, because you're interrupting my concentration. It's like if I walked in and you're doing a task, and I interrupt you, you're going to be like, I was in the middle of a video game and now I've died because you because you came in like,
because mommy wants juice.
yeah, like mom needs, mom and dad need that too. And
Mhm,
I know it's hard when you're a parent, especially if you're a stay-at-home parent, because I did that too, and to feel like you should be able to have time for yourself, but you really should. I
mhm,
mean, you're a much better parent if you can take that time for yourself. And I think the hard part is it's very overwhelming to build those into your routine. So if you can kind of see what others have done and we can have conversations about what we've done,
mhm,
then we can have people take away from those conversations and kind of see how they can adapt what other people have done into their own routine. So this is a lot of this is born out of just, I had 2 kids and I flat refused, beyond a certain time to just stay home with them. I was like, I am not staying home. Like I love them and I want to be a parent to them. And teaching was great because I had breaks where I could have them and take care of them. But I was like, yo, y'all need to go back to work to like daycare or school or whatever because mom's got to work too.
and I'm so glad that you brought that up. I mean, really, I think that you probably just did a huge service to listeners of this show who are thinking, how am I going to do all this? Like, and just, I love how the conversation you so openly had about like training children to be
Yes.
contributions
Training.
in the family. I mean, kind of, we train our horses, we have to train our children too. But I love what you
Yes.
also said. There's somebody sitting there saying, I would really like to do this, looking at their lives and their families and their jobs and all the things. And like, how do I do this? But I love you said, just find an hour and just start and bring
Start
people to the
small.
table and help them commit to your goal and your dream and ask them for that hour, that magic
Mhm.
hour where you can churn
Small.
something out. Those little moments add up to,
Mhm.
look at you, two books, you created
2
something, you
books.
put it in the world, and you're not stopping, which I love.
No, I I'm not gonna pretend this was easy. There were plenty of days, especially during lockdown, which is why this book is so meaningful to me, not just because I wrote a book and here it is out in the world. No, like this book is meaningful to me because I survived the experience and not just survived it, like it was done on time. And
Mhm,
I swear to gosh, Carly, I had days where I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I don't know how I'm gonna get this done. I don't know how I'm gonna get it's gonna be crap and I'm gonna be like embarrassed. And so far, everyone that's read it, the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. My editor, who thinks I'm crazy because I'm constantly like, "Oh my god, it's not the same as the first one." He's like, "It's good." Stop it." And then, my husband, he's like, "It's good. Stop it." And it's like, "Okay, good." Because I swear there were days where I was like, "I don't know how this is gonna get done.
mhm. And
I don't
that's
know."
so normal. I mean, you even did,
Mhm.
and you should be very proud of yourself, but you did it in like really adverse conditions. But it's
Yes.
hard even when to
It's
write a
it's
book,
easy.
even when all that stuff is going on. Yeah, it's just being a creative and writing a book and putting the words on the page is challenging, but it's so rewarding
It
too.
it is, and I still to this day marvel that I have that many words in my head.
Right? I know.
I
If
mean,
you really think
honestly.
about it, yeah, it's like, whoa, that I did that? How did that come out of
How?
me?
This is like 95,000 words, like, where did 95,000 words come from?
That's incredible. So the Foxes of Belair,
Mhm,
why okay, so you mentioned a little earlier like why you chose this one, but like
mhm.
what I don't know, like as you were doing your research or as you were learning about these horses and this family and this farm, like what made you like so excited to sink your teeth in and write 95,000 words?
The first one was about the first Triple Crown winner, and if you're a horse racing person, you know that the Triple Crown is, like, the end all be all of accomplishments, really, in the sport, and if you're not a horse racing fan, you're very familiar with at least the Kentucky Derby and the whole experience, the traditions around it. So, the first book was spent, with a lot of, "This is all new, and this is all pioneering," and it was a post antebellum World War One, very different time than in the sport than we're used to now. With the second book, we're a lot closer to modern horse racing.
Mhm.
So we're now shifting into a different time period. And I think that's one of the reasons why I liked it so much because when I started doing it, I was like, I want to see what's changed in the sport. Because to me, it's very important to look at where we've been so that we can appreciate where we are and then plan for where we're going. So that's my philosophy behind everything. Because people know me as a horse racing historian. I do more current events type stuff now for the work that I'm doing. But I'm very much rooted in, if you want us to have a future that looks in any way like something positive, you have to reflect on where we've been. You have to look at how we got where we are. I spend a lot of time in horse racing reading what other people are saying and listening to conversations that they're having. And to me, the history of the sport is really important because it gives us perspective on why we do things the way we do now. And so, and that's not just for horse racing, that's for any pursuit, regardless of what type of sport you're in or what type of field you're in. Looking at where you've been helps you really contemplate where you are and what you can do next. And so I'm very much like, you should be invested in history because history has value. If nothing else, it's teaching you what not to do the next time. But like for this book, I really wanted to see what had changed between doing the first book, which was set in 1919, 1920, and 1930, 1929, 1930, when this starts. And so there was the advent of the starting gate, which is huge in horse racing. The standing start is now, we have this big contraption. There was some learning curve with that one for the sport. There were several iterations before he landed on the one that we have now. That was a big part of this. The whole idea of William Woodward and, creating there are other people who'd done this before who had created, whole farms and whole breeding operations with the, express goal of winning. But he did it with I have this childhood goal to win the Epsom Derby. If you're an American that knows anything about horse racing, the Epsom Derby is the progenitor of every other derby or derby in the world. And so that was his goal. And he turned that into not just this, breeding program that was dominant for a decade, but also into the Triple Crown, because he was the first person to really send all of his horses on that path with the express purpose of winning those 3 races. And so that's why I identified not just the 2 horses because they happened to win the Triple Crown, but also because, he was the person that solidified all this. Well, he wasn't the only one, but he started the process that solidified this into what we know today. And then also, and forgive me, but Omaha was the 3rd Triple Crown winner. And if you look at a list of here's the 13 Triple Crown winners, here's where they're rated, you'll inevitably see Omaha kind of toward the bottom because he wasn't as consistent a racehorse as some of the other ones were. He's the only American Triple Crown winner to race in England.
Wow.
Went, on a boat across the Atlantic, because this is before airplanes, before you could ship a horse on an airplane. Put him on a boat. 2 weeks later, he was in England and then spent an entire season racing in England. No other Triple Crown winner has done that. Other American horses have done that, but to send a horse that has done this, and then, we're going to do one better and go to a completely different country and try to win the Ascot Gold Cup, by the way. Not just race in England, but to win, at Royal Ascot on literally the sport's biggest day. Omaha's, he attempted the Ascot Gold Cup, came in second by a nose, and it went down as the number 1 race of the 20th century in England. No idea. Not a clue about this until I started doing the book, and I was like, for real, this is what happened?
Wow.
I have read so many things about the Triple Crown and this and that. It had never landed with me that was what had happened. And so when you read the book, if you read Foxes, pick it up and read it. The prologue is the 1936 Ascot Gold Cup, because I was like, you know what? We're going to start at this monumental moment. And I'm going to pull you into the story with this. Which is basically, it wasn't Omaha's last race. It was his next to last race, but it's this huge moment in the sport because it was William Woodward had such a wealth of horses that he didn't need this Triple Crown winner to stay in America, so he sent him to England and dueled for 2.5 miles over the Ascot Heath with the filly that beat him by a nose, which was not a photo finish because they didn't have photo finish cameras during that era.
Wow, that's
I know, right?
amazing. And that's so interesting too. Like, I love that you're a historian. How many things do you think are overlooked that only are uncovered when people start researching to write a book? Like, that's a story that you said you'd never heard of before. That's an incredible story. You just
I
brought it back into like being.
I I think with the thing about history is that, that one of the reasons why I do it is primarily I wrote this book first. And I suspected when I started doing research on the first book that there were a lot of details that had been omitted,
Mm,
either by just time, the intervals between our time periods, or convenience, or just whatever. And I think history is rich with those sort of untold stories that kind of lurk beneath the surface and just need the right person to bring them out.
mm.
So that's sort of, I guess, what I've self-appointed myself to be, is that person. My publisher has no problem with this. They love it. They're like, "You're great. You should keep doing stuff like this." I'm like, "Thank you. Okay, thank."
I think
So,
it's awesome. Yeah.
it it's I'm an academic by trade. Like, my background was I had initially gone into teaching and had wanted to teach writing to students, especially students like me who were educated in school systems that weren't always provided with all the resources they needed. And so I was always very much like motivated to help my students find their writing process to help them maximize the talent that they already had.
Mm,
That was always my goal. And then when I started writing for myself, I got to the point where I was like, I've done a lot of work for other people. I haven't done a lot of stuff for myself. And this is what I wanted to do was I wanted to do the history of the sport because that's really what sucked me in to begin with anyway. Like, I
mhm.
grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. I never touched a horse until I was 15, but I fell in love with them through the stories that I read and the stories that I saw on TV. And so if I can do that for somebody else by, doing the history of the sport, then I mean, heck yeah, I'm going to do it.
That is incredible. Good on you. You are doing it. You're
Yes.
telling the stories and sparking it in someone else. And thank heaven for the people that wrote the stories and did the shows
Mhm.
that attracted you. That's how
Oh,
so many of
yes.
us come to love horses, because we're not all blessed to have them, right? So we read about
Mhm.
them and we learn about them through the books that are written. So that's why I love this podcast so much and all the
Yay.
authors that come on. So thank you so much. Boiling it down in the Foxes of Belair, is there like a message for you? I love how you opened it with kind of this untold story and you pulled people into the conversation. Is there kind of a message in there that you hope like readers will grasp when they close the book and had read the final page?
I would like for people to take away, if nothing else, with the power of dreaming,
Mm,
because William Woodward, if you read enough about him, he started out in a very privileged position. He was the son of, a financier. He had access to, money and opportunity. So, he started out with a leg up that most people, but he had a dream. And there's a lot of people who are in certain positions who don't necessarily have to do anything with their position. They can just, live a life that they've been expected to live based on what their parents did and
mhm,
continue in that direction. He had a very specific goal, like a very specific, dream. He wanted to achieve this. He wanted to be, win on the sport's biggest days, win the Epsom Derby, win the English Classics, which turned into winning the American Classics, and on and on and on. And he devoted a lot of time and money to the sport of horse racing, and he was a hands-on person too, as
mm,
much as he could be. So he didn't have to do those things. He could have just had a family, worked as a banker, you know, lived your basic upper class life from the first part of the 20th century, the Victorian era, into, World War II, he didn't have to do this. Could have just sailed on his yacht and been a banker, and that would be fine. But he had a goal, and yes, he had more wealth and privilege than a lot of people did to actually meet that goal. But in the process of pursuing it, he put a lot of people to work. He made a lot of difference in other people's lives. He helped the sport become what we know it is now. And so I'm troubled by trying to talk about dreams when you talk about someone that has a lot of, resources already available to them. But I mean, honestly, like anything worth doing needs to start with a dream or a goal. So whether it's something massive like this, where, he founded this estate and, bred all these horses and made history basically, or whether it's, I'm going to write a book. So if nothing else, hopefully from the book, you take away that dreams can have a lot of power, and a lot of power, not just for an individual, but for a lot of other people too. So that's ultimately it's it's a hard question to answer, because he started out with a lot of money, and when he finished, he had a lot of money. But he literally had a dream, and like the entirety of the sport was changed in some ways because he had a dream.
But I love how you sum that up, though. He used his resources rather than sitting on his laurels. He used his resources
Yeah.
to, they were there to help him achieve a dream, but he didn't have to he didn't have to want to put anything out there. I think you summed that up really beautifully. Dreams are important. You never know where they're going to take you. I love that. And then, whether a book is like a New York Times bestseller or it sells just a few copies, it does touch the reader, someone.
Mhm.
And I think the holding that book and knowing I have that many words in my head and I actually made that, where did that come from,
Yeah.
is like nothing can deflate that. I mean, it's
No.
incredible that we have that experience.
I always want to motivate people to try,
Mhm.
like, especially writers. Try. There are 8 billion people on this planet. Somewhere, someone wants to read something you have to say, and
Yeah.
you will be surprised at how many people will want to read what you have to say. Because I think a lot of us, when you're a writer, it's a very solitary pursuit. You spend a lot of time on your own, doing your work, and you don't, occasionally get to have podcasts, or you get to have conversations with other writers, or you get to go into a writers group and talk to other writers. But, ultimately writing is a solitary pursuit. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of, people are not going to be interested in what I have to say. Like, dude, if you have a dream to write a book, like, heck fire, go write the
Mhm.
book. Just start.
Yeah.
And then if, it may not be the world, beater that you want it to be. Okay, well, that's fine. That's one book. You did it once, you can do it again and again and again and again. So
Mhm.
that's always my overriding thing. Like, I'm never going to tell anybody you should not try. You should try.
Mhm.
You may not be where you want to be in terms of your talent or your style or whatever. That's fine. Okay, the person I am at 46 is not the person I was at 16. I will tell you that. And
Mhm.
I've been writing since I was 12.
Mhm.
But, I've gained a lot through that time period, and I do believe that every writer has the ability to, you know, as long as they're trying, as long as they're pursuing and dreaming, to do something great with it. And you just don't know until you do it what's gonna come about.
Oh, I love that. Yes, let's all try. Keep trying
Yes.
no matter what. And I
Yes.
love it. If you do it once, the first one is, I think, the biggest hurdle. If you can do it
Mm,
once, you can do it
mhm.
again.
And
And your writing
again.
grows and changes and
Mhm.
morphs and gets better and better. With your new book, it was a lockdown book. You wrote it during COVID. Now
Yes.
things have opened back up. How are you getting the message out about this book? I think you mentioned a couple signings. Like, how are you planning to reach readers with the new work?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. That's the one I think I spend the most time on.
You got to show off that tattoo.
Well, there's that. The what writing the book was actually the easy part, I think. Because other than, like, having 2 children under feet the whole time and trying to, like, get everyone sorted to make sure they were settled. Finishing the book, I was like, "Oh, yay, I finished it. Oh, now comes the fun part, which is getting it out into the world." And so it's done, it's pretty, I it's real, which is great. And so I've got a calendar page on my blog where I've got all my events listed. And then I do an inordinate amount of social media, which I really enjoy because I do a lot of it. And that's like my main way of really reaching people is doing social media. And I've tried desperately to find like an intern or something can I be your project, please? Because I'm constantly worried that I'm not doing enough.
Oh,
And if
wow.
I talk to my publisher, they're like, "You're doing plenty." And
Mm-hmm.
they like to send new writers to me and go like,
Oh.
"Do what Jennifer does." And I'm like, "No, no." Like, no. But I'm on Twitter and Facebook and, Instagram, and so I try to do outreach that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm attempting TikTok. I am not a Luddite by any stretch. And like, it's been wonderful because the marketing team at my publisher, the University of Western Kentucky, have done a wonderful job of providing me with graphics so that I don't necessarily have to do graphics because I'm a writer. Like, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
a graphic design background. I
Mm-hmm.
can't do this the same way. So they will do that. And then, and then of course, as I do book events, like in-person events, finally, I will be trying to do TikToks and recording everything, on, with my phone
Mm-hmm.
and try to share that on social media as much as possible. I am getting to do a lot of the events that I did in 2019. Um, I will be at the Belair mansion. So like,
Cool.
William Woodward's mansion in Maryland is actually a museum now. And so I get to do an event there,
That's
which
cool.
I'm so excited about.
Yeah.
And then I've got like a long list of stuff I'm working on. It's been a lot of fun.
And
And
I think it's so funny that you were saying like your publisher sends people to you, do what Jennifer's doing, but you're like, oh no, no. That is such an attribute to us being our own worst enemies because you are very visible, Jennifer, and I think that you do
Thank you.
awesome amount of marketing of your books, and I think you do a great job. And we're our own worst enemies. So like marketing is this ever existing black hole that you constantly have to go into. But what I love that you said is you're embracing it. You're thinking of unique, different things to try. Like, that's it. Like, just try things. If it doesn't work, it's okay. But you're willing to put in the effort to be visible. You're
Hmm.
scheduling events. You're doing a great job with your social. You're here on the podcast. I mean, you're doing a great job.
I
I'm really
appreciate it.
impressed. Yeah.
But it's a learning process too. And I do want people, if you are in the process of putting out a book, especially if you're self-publishing,
Mm,
so much of it falls on you.
mm-hmm,
So do what you can to kind of see what other people have done
mm-hmm.
and maybe have conversations with other writers and ask some questions about what they've done, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. Don't spend money on anything until you absolutely have to. So like don't go on Facebook and get a Facebook ad. Find someone who's done that before.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them how well that worked out for them and then go from there because I look at Facebook is great, but your list is curated based on who you follow or who you're connected to. And then Instagram can be challenging if you don't have a lot of visuals because Instagram is so focused on visual.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you have to know as a writer what your assets are and like, okay, well, I don't know a ton of people, but I'm going to find ways to connect with people on Facebook, join a couple of groups, that kind of stuff. And if you're not a graphics person, like I am not, find a friend who is good at that stuff. And then, maybe you can sit down and learn some stuff from them. And it's a lot easier than it looks. It's just time consuming. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why people are intimidated by it because it is time consuming. And I mean, I've got friends who are social media people who are like, "Well, you can schedule all these posts out." And I'm like, "Yes, I'm aware, but a lot of times my stuff is kind of like, oh,
Yep.
I just got an idea for that. Like I was in the shower thinking
Yep.
about what I had to do that day. You're a writer. Like
Mm-hmm.
unless you have a marketing degree, this is not your field of study." Like just kind of learn and see what other people have done and take cues from them because that's honestly what I did was
Mm-hmm.
like look and see what other people are doing and not ride their coattails so much as kind of, okay, I can take that and make it mine
Mhm.
in some way.
I love that. Educate. I always say this, educate, educate, educate yourself, especially when you're new to
Yes.
the table. Like talk to other people who have been there before
Mhm.
you. Look at what other people are doing that inspires you. And like you said, how could I use this idea and make it my own? But I also, what I love is I think you are like excited about trying these different things on social media. And that's the thing, like you have to be excited about it, because if it's an
Mhm.
obligation, then, if it's an obligation and you don't like social, there's other ways to reach readers.
Mhm.
Maybe pick one channel, do a little there.
Yeah.
But like, and you keep saying we're writers. I think the best thing you can do is keep building your catalog and
Mhm.
spending time writing. Like people will
Yes.
find you, and connecting with other authors helps you. Pick the best things that'll get you the most visibility and then move on and write that next book.
Yeah, and, like, don't be afraid to talk to other writers,
Right.
because 9 times out of 10, most other writers want to talk about what they're doing anyway.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I rarely run into someone who does not want to talk about what they're working on. I mean, whether it's social media or books or whatever,
Yeah.
it is rare that you talk to another writer and they're just kind of closed mouth about what they're working on, because most of us really do want to connect with other writers,
Mhm.
because it is a solitary pursuit and you do learn something from talking to other people. So I find it rewarding to engage like that.
Other authors are not our competition. When we lift
Mm-mm.
ourselves up, we're all writing about horses. Everyone gets lifted. That's
Mhm.
why I love spotlighting and talking to other authors. Yes. So
Yes,
the door is open. Don't be afraid to step through it and ask other authors questions and build
absolutely.
relationships, because there's so many cool opportunities that have come out for
Mhm.
me through connecting with other authors, like opportunities to do book events where we're all together, opportunities to meet up at conferences, opportunities to email swap, opportunities to do giveaways, like all sorts of things
Mhm.
happen when you connect with other authors. And Jennifer, thank you. I think you said that so well. The root of all of this is happiness. Like I love what you're creating with your life. I love how you're handling, your family. I love what you're up to. I love your writing. I love your energy. Thank you for sharing so much
Oh,
wisdom
yes.
on the show today. Would you share with listeners where they can learn more about you and your books?
I have a website that's Jennifer Kelly Writes. So it's my name and the word writes. And then linked on that page, you can find the blog that I did for the first book, which is still extant. I just don't update it anymore, but all the content is still there. The blog I have for foxes, which is not as healthy as the first one, but it's functional. And then and then links to where you can find me in other places. I contribute to America's Best Racing. I contribute to TwinSpires Edge, and then I contribute to the Racing Biz. You can find me on those websites too. But that's where to find me.
I have so loved having you on the show again, Jennifer.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much for the gift of your time.
Yes, thank you, Carly, for the gift of your time and your enthusiasm for other writers. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and writing, just like me. Visit my website, carlycadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlycadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlycadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Cade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.